Hello, Louisiana, and welcome to another edition of At the Book. I'm Zach Ewing with Devin Jackson and Jim Derry, and this is, week 6 of college football, week 5 of the NFL. We're zooming through here, guys.
We definitely are. It's going quick.
And that will all get started tonight. We also have baseball playoffs to talk about. We got to at least spend a minute on that game last night. Terrific wild card game between the Dodgers and Cardinals. Walk-off home run by Chris Taylor ended it, and we're ready to talk baseball playoffs too. But we'll start with football. We'll start with Thursday night football as we always do. And we've got the Rams facing the Seahawks tonight, a little NFC West battle. Rams laying 2.5, total 55. We're back on the big Fox network. It's not just NFL Network tonight. This is a kind of a tough one. Both teams have some injuries. Both teams have had kind of up and down performances. A little bit tough to get a gauge on a short week here.
There's no doubt about it. And I don't think we know what either one of these teams are. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I picked the Rams in my picks, but it's probably not one I'm really going to play. I still think the Rams are the best team. But, who knows? After last week, I don't usually let 1 week change my mind on things, but last week was such a beat down by Arizona. It's tough not to think that maybe the Rams aren't as good as we thought they were. So, and meanwhile, Seattle's desperate. So it's an interesting matchup for sure. Yeah,
I mean, just about every team in NFL history has down weeks from time to time.
Yeah.
07 Patriots, I guess you could say, is an exception, but I don't put too much stock in the Rams last week, but it is a short week. If anything, I kind of feel like the total of 55 is too high on a short week. I know Seattle plays high-scoring games, and the Rams can score too, and their defense hasn't been as good as we thought, but just seems like that's a lot of points for a Thursday night. Devin, what's your take?
Yeah, the Thursday night games are weird. They're usually either extremely high-scoring or they're just pretty much duds. So this one could go either way. Both teams on a short week, got some injuries, so it could go either way, honestly, but I think we'll get a good game regardless. I don't think either team is going to blow out the other. I think, NFC West games are always interesting, always comes down to the wire. But I think Seattle will come to play. I feel like they've kind of hit their stride after struggling the first couple of weeks, holding a lead, and, we'll play LA down to the wire.
Yeah, extremely meaningful game as pretty much any NFC West divisional battle is going to be this year. Also have the other two NFC West teams playing 49ers and Cardinals on Sunday. And we'll get into that a little bit as we will the big college football game of the week, Iowa and Penn State. We'll talk about LSU and the Saints and where they go after a lousy weekend. But first, let's do Cashin' In with Carville for week 5. As you know, you can log on to NOLA.com/cashin', or maybe you don't know, but you can, and you can make your picks against James Carville. We've got monthly prizes. Unfortunately, if you didn't play last week, you're already behind the 8 ball there. But Carville didn't have a good week for once in his life. He was only 2-6, 2-4 on his picks, and then he also automatically picks LSU and the Saints, and obviously neither of them covered last week. So 2-6. So you're only behind 2 games. You know what? I got to look at the standings. I haven't figured them out. You're pretty close though, Jim. You might be in the lead of our picks grid in the paper, but don't get that ego too big, man. We'll talk big bucks.
Well, I got to
later,
take it when I can get it.
Yeah, we'll talk big bucks later. All right. But Cashin' In with Carville for this week. Let's roll it. Let's get his picks for this week and his thoughts on LSU and the Saints and their struggles. Welcome to Cashin' In with Carville for October the 7th. I'm Zach Ewing with the one and only James Carville. James, a sort of a lousy weekend for Louisiana football last weekend. We're hoping for better this time around.
Stunk. I mean, we lose at two home games, and neither one to what I would call stellar teams. Right? It was a lousy weekend.
Similar games, too. Had the lead going into the fourth quarter in both games and just couldn't seem to find the offense to put the game away or the defense to get that last stop.
Right. It was. But when you start losing games like that late, I would, and I'm just automatic on the Saints. you would be a rich person if you bet on Sean Payton the week after a loss. I mean, that's just when they lose the next week, their record of covering is very high.
Again, a reminder of the rules. James doesn't pick LSU or the Saints.
I don't
games,
pick LSU. Or the
he's
Saints.
giving you some advice here. So
that's my advice is look up Sean Payton's record after a loss. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And as for LSU, it doesn't get any easier. Kentucky, Florida, I think Ole Miss, and then Alabama.
Hey, you don't forget A&M, Arkansas. But I think we got ULM stuck somewhere in there. Look, we hang out in a tough neighborhood. That's just what it is. And it was, thus it was, thus it is, thus it shall be. And, you know, if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best.
Very important game in Lexington this weekend, I would think.
It really is. It's because if we lose that game, you know, the whole thing could move away from us here.
It sinks fast at that point.
You know, I think it was a 3-point underdog to Kentucky.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. 3.5, actually. Yeah.
3.5. Make you laugh. I'm not. Instead of LSU and the Saints, there was a legendary sports TV personality here by the name of Hap Vardy, and some of our older viewers will remember Hap well. And he used to have his blue plate special. And so I got outside of our pick, I got 2 blue plate specials this weekend. One, West Virginia gets 3 at Baylor. I like West Virginia. And the 49ers are getting 6 in Arizona. I like the 49ers. So I got 2 road dogs for the blue plate special.
West Virginia and the San Francisco 49ers. We're having our dessert first here. We'll get into the main course.
Yeah. Well, this is just because I don't pick, you know, the Saints and the LSU. I figure I'll try to give our viewers another place to try to win.
All right. And your picks last week for the first time all year, I think you were 2-4, but still 15-9 for the season. So
yeah, T-Boy had a toothache and his son had to get a pair of pliers. So he wasn't feeling too good, but he's back up and running.
All right. Well, let's get to the picks for this week then. We will start with the Red River rivalry, as it's called now, at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. That is the Oklahoma Sooners laying 3 points against their rival Texas Longhorns.
Okie. I'm an Okie from Muskogee.
All right. I came from Bakersfield, so there you go. I like that.
There you go. You're from Bakersfield?
I worked there for 10 years.
Oh, wow. They used to be a huge speech festival there. I've been there any number of times.
The Bakersfield Business Conference you're talking about. Yeah. What a small world.
Yeah, I've been there like 4 times.
I've been there a couple times myself. Not in the same capacity as you, though. So that's the game. That's the game of the week in the Big 12. That'll get you started at 11 a.m. Central Time. And James Carville likes the Sooners -3. I guess the game of the week in the SEC. It's a little difficult to pinpoint this week, but it is the CBS game of the week. Georgia at Auburn, big rivalry game there as well. And the Dogs, who have just rolled over everybody this year, are road favorites by 15 points.
Take the dog against the Dogs.
All right. The Auburn Tigers, who came into LSU and won last week, and Georgia thumped Arkansas. So both teams riding high, and we like the points there. The big game in the Big Ten, and probably around the nation, Penn State comes to Iowa City. This game opened to pick 'em, but right now it's Iowa -2.5.
Penn State.
Taking Penn State with the points.
Correct.
All right. So in our college games, we have Oklahoma, Auburn, and Penn State. Moving on to the NFL. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals off to a 3-1 start. They're home against the Green Bay Packers, catching 3. Who do we like? Packers -3.
I feel like a traitor here. Packers.
All right. Well, Joe will understand. He'll laugh after he wins it.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll. I hope that I hope it looks like he and Jamar Chase off to what you'd expect kind of start if he stays healthy and they can anyway block them. Look, I think Max Johnson, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I mean, if you got no run game, you imagine what that takes away from you. Yeah, no, I mean you're right, and he's been pretty solid so far without that. Very solid. He's really good, I think. Our problem, traditionally, LSU's problem has been at the quarterback position. That is not the case. Definitely not. No, it's a strange year for sure.
Out in LA, the Chargers riding high after a Monday Night Football win. They are -1.5 against the Cleveland Browns, another team heavy on LSU alum.
Yeah, I'll go Cleavage here.
Okay, Cleveland +1.5 there. And then the Sunday nighter, one of the bigger games of the year thus far, the Buffalo Bills at Kansas City. Kansas City -2.5.
Buffalo.
All right, we're taking the Bills. They have looked like world beaters so far.
Oh, man. Josh Allen looks like he's, I don't know who,
Yeah,
Tom Brady or Johnny Unitas or something.
Looks fantastic. So those are our picks. We have Oklahoma, Auburn, and Penn State in the college game. We're going Packers, Browns, and Bills in the NFL. We had our dessert first. How about a little lanyard? Who do you like to win the World Series, James? The playoffs have started now.
God, man, I watched that game last night. It was good. It was tense, so the Dodgers kind of broke it open a little bit. I was torn because I love Max Scherzer, season ticket holder to the Nats. And Max Scherzer is like, turned heroes of mine. He's in somewhere in Joe Burrow League, okay? But Adam Wainwright, that guy's 40 years old, and he's a gutsy ball. They're not fashionable to pick, but something tells me the Astros going to hang around for a while.
People around here will like to hear that.
I would really, my preference would be the Tampa Bay and the Giants. I think that the story of the 2021 San Francisco Giants is just one of the most remarkable stories in sports because no one saw it coming.
No, you're right.
You generally
7 wins.
Yeah. They just kept winning. And that guy from LSU, he's going to pitch the first game for him.
Kevin Gausman.
Yeah, and he's good. He's having a hell of a year.
That will be one heck of a series, Georgia, Dodgers and Giants.
Yeah, and we got LeMahieu and to Yankees, and we got Alex Bregman, going. And I saw that they took Kim Mulkey's son, Kramer Robinson. The Cardinals took him on a travel team. So I think he had 300 in AAA.
Yeah, and he can steal some bases, which I think if they needed one, he would have been on the base paths last night.
Right, he's a real athlete, and he's a comer, absolutely. And I'm excited about the new LSU baseball coach too. I think we're going to be good.
Yeah, they start in fall practice this week as well. So a little bit of everything on Cashin' In with Carville this week. We hope you log on NOLA.com/cashin' in, make your picks, and try to beat James Carville. And James, we thank you, and we'll see you next week.
You bet. Hat Roddy, Blue Plate Special. Okay.
So that was Cashin' In with Carville. That was recorded earlier this morning. You can't get that guy's spirits down, but he's obviously bothered by the way LSU is playing and the Saints as well, although his tip of the week, even though he doesn't pick the Saints bounce back. They bounce back all the time under Sean Payton. They're very good at that, and it is a very important game, as Jim has talked about all week on his Datitude podcast, which, Jim, you'll have another one of tomorrow, I believe, with Mike Haas.
I am. I'm excited about it. Mike agreed to come on the show, so we'll see what it's like to be the voice of the Saints and after 4 games. And hey, he's got the second best job in America.
What would be the best?
Well, it's got to be Pat Hughes as the voice of the Chicago Cubs. Otherwise, he gets to do 162 of them. Mike only gets to do 20, I guess, if you count preseason.
Are you saying that you would leave this job for Mike Haas's job?
If I get offered that job, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Oh, see, that's the kind of political answer that makes me worry right there. No, let's hone in on the local teams though, and we'll start with LSU because they play Saturday night at Kentucky. And as much of a must-win game as that is for the Saints, LSU might be even more of a must-win situation because you look at their schedule after this game, and they've got Florida. Now, that's a home game, but it's still Florida, and they're a top 10 caliber team. I know they lost to Kentucky last week, which tells you how difficult this one will be. But then after Florida, it's Ole Miss, then it's Alabama, then it's Arkansas, then they get UL Monroe, a little respite, and then they finish with Texas A&M. Like, outside of that ULM game, LSU, it will not be favored again this year, especially if they don't win this game, and that's what makes this one so tough.
Yeah, they've really struggled finishing games. That's been kind of their big thing. The encouraging thing about the Auburn game is that they were able to start fast and able to get points. But you want to see them score touchdowns in a red zone and find ways to put away their opponents early on. And they just weren't able to do that against Auburn. And even against Mississippi State, they let them kind of back in at the latter half of the game. So they don't have a problem with starting the game. Even against UCLA, they started out the game pretty well. But for some reason, those last couple quarters, they just can't finish. And I think it has to do with the lack of running game. They just really have not been able to figure that out and get that going.
Yeah, a couple of really concerning things for LSU. Number one is 29 rushing yards against Auburn. 29? I mean, that was one drive for LSU for many, many years, for decades. That was, if they didn't get 29 rushing yards on a single drive, you thought it was a bad drive. So 29 for and part of that, there's like a 22-yard bad snap team loss, but still, that's not very many yards against a good team. And then the other thing is Derek Stingley may be out for the season. He's going to be out for a while. They say he's got a foot injury, had surgery. He's going to try to come back. But if you're Derek Stingley, Jim, you're top round pick in the NFL draft next spring, almost no matter what you do. If you're looking at coming back to a team that's 5-5 or something, I mean, I don't know that you bother.
He's not coming back. He's not coming back. The reason, who knows? We're not in the doctor's office with him, but this is something we're seeing more and more these days with potential first round picks playing for bad teams. They get injured and they disappear and they don't play. Jamar Chase just said, "I'm not playing." Period. He knew it was gonna be a bad team. So I would be shocked if he comes back at all, because by the time he's ready to come back, whenever that is, the LSU could be 4-5, 3-6, something along those lines. This is a game where I'm going to make a prediction here, and I don't think I'm going that far off the ledge when I say if LSU doesn't win this game, Coach O is not going to make it through this season because their schedule, it's like you said, Zach, if they don't win this game, then I could easily see them kind of falling into the tank and saying, okay, this season's a lost cause. And emotionally, where do they go from here? And you're right. There certainly almost surely will be the underdog in the remainder of their games, or the remainder of their SEC games. I think they will bounce back. I think they will have a good game. I'm not sure they'll win or not. We'll talk about the picks, I guess, later, but it's not one that I'll play. But I have a suspicion that they will play well, and that they have a very good chance to win in Lexington. Although they haven't played there very much, but the last time they won in Lexington was a pretty special game. If you
the Bluegrass Miracle, yeah, that's right.
The last time they won.
It's a letdown spot for Kentucky. They just had a huge win against Florida, one of the biggest wins in program history, honestly. So it's a tricky spot for Kentucky too. I'm with you, Jim. I think especially if I'm getting the 3 in the hook, I'm taking the Tigers. I think it could be a close game. So, Devin, do you agree with that, or are you going with Kentucky?
I think Kentucky will ultimately pull it out. I just don't have faith in LSU right now to finish games. In Kentucky, their defense is really, really good, and I have issues with LSU's offensive line, how they're going to be able to hold up against that pressure. And then, if they can't run the football, you're a one-dimensional team, and teams are just going to tee off on third down and send blitzes and pretty much have no fear of the LSU running the ball. So I think Kentucky ultimately wins the game. I don't think LSU will have enough to get over the hump and beat Kentucky.
Yeah, Max Johnson and James Carville mentioned it. Max Johnson's really done a hell of a job if you consider the fact that their offensive line has not played well. They don't have a running game. Pretty much in the second half, teams know they're going to throw. And he still has good numbers. He threw the one interception at the very end last week, but other than that, didn't turn the ball over. He really hasn't had that problem. He's the one reason I give LSU a chance, because if he could hit a couple of big plays to Cashin Butte, maybe a Jack Besh, a tight end down the seam type play. Kentucky's offense not real explosive. If you can get a cushion against them, you can start teeing off on defense against that Kentucky running game. I think LSU has a chance here. And look, every time Ed Orgeron has been doubted, and he has been doubted a lot, he has bounced back. He was doubted in 2018. They went to the Fiesta Bowl. Then they won the national championship the next year. He was doubted at the end of last year. I'm like, God, they're terrible. But then they went to Florida and won the shoe game, which was one of the bigger shocks of the season that LSU won that game. So when he is cornered, he tends to coach his best. And we'll see if that happens. If it doesn't, as you say, Jim, he may not be the coach in Baton Rouge a whole lot longer. Let's move on to the Saints. Similar situation for them, not quite as dire for the coach, I wouldn't think. But if they lose this game, they're going into the bye week at 2-3. And you've talked about it all week long, Jim, but their schedule gets tough after this. And this is not an easy game either. Now, Washington is a weird team because they've managed to get to 2-2, but not how we thought. Like Ryan Fitzpatrick got hurt. Taylor Heineke has come in and he's lit it up. The defense hasn't been that good, but they survived a game against the Giants. Did they beat the Chargers? Now I'm having trouble remembering how they did in week 1. They did beat the Chargers, right? That was their only.
They won in week 1. I don't remember.
Yeah, that was the Chargers' only loss. So I mean, you look at what Washington's done, and it's kind of similar to the Saints, where they've won some games you wouldn't expect them to. The
Cowboys.
Oh, never mind.
No. Yeah, the Chargers have. Yeah, they lost to the Chargers 20-16.
This is what I get for doing it on the fly. So they did lose to the Chargers, but my point being, Washington has gotten to 2-2, but not necessarily in the way you'd think.
That is true, and I will say this: I will make another bold prediction. If the Saints lose this game, Sean Payton will still be the coach at the end of this season. That is
going out on a limb there.
I'm really going out on a limb there. It's a must-win. It's a must-win if you want to go to the playoffs. That is, it's not a must-win for Sean Payton, but it's a must-win if you look at they just can't run this gauntlet without winning games like this. You cannot lose to 2 NFC East teams in a row, back-to-back, and think you're a playoff team because you're not. And so kind of, I think even more so than Coach O, Sean Payton obviously has a longer track record. This team will be focused this week. I will tell you this. I would be surprised if the Saints have a lot of penalties. I'd be surprised if they don't win the turnover battle. And usually that's a formula for success. So I do like the Saints. The thing that makes me a little leery is so does the public. And I've been well documented in saying I don't like to bet with the public. The public's about 60% here in favor of the Saints, and that scares me to death. But Vegas knows something we don't. I thought this line was a little low. I thought the Saints would open up a little bit. I thought it'd be more like a field goal and eventually get to the hook. So it doesn't look like it's going to get that far. It's open up at 1, I believe. It's up to 2. But I think the big money's on the Saints too. So who knows? But they've got it. They've got to get to Taylor Heineke, and they've got to keep looking at this vaunted Redskins. God, did it again. Football team defense. They've given up now 29 points, 43 points, and 30 points in their last 3 games. So the Saints are going to have to find a way to jump on that gravy train.
Yeah, that defense has not been good. And Devin, that's what I was going to ask you. It's just when we thought of the Washington football team last year when they won the NFC least, and then going into this season thinking they were a contender, the first name I thought was Chase Young. In that defensive line, right. And they're going to dominate teams on defense, and they're going to do enough on offense. By the way, I looked it up. I don't know how I screwed this up. They beat the Falcons last week, 34-30. It was a nice play at the end. They got the ball, I think, to J.D. McKissick for a touchdown at the end. Their losses were to the Chargers and to the Bills, so 2 very tough games. And then they barely beat the Giants and the Falcons, who we don't think of as tough teams. So Devin, what's going on with the football team?
Yeah, their defense hasn't been creating pressure. Kind of similar to the Saints. The Saints have been able to get turnovers though in the first couple of weeks. Washington has struggled getting to the quarterback, and we thought, with their defensive line and what they have coming back, especially with Chase Young, you thought, they would be getting after teams, but they just haven't done so. Their passing defense has been pretty bad as well. The Falcons were able to move the ball up and down the field against them. The Chargers were in the second half of that game. Even the Giants were able to move the ball up and down the field with them. If it wasn't for a few Giants blunders, honestly, the Giants should have won.
They should have won that game. They should have. I don't even think the guy was offside.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, they should really be 1-3 and really could have lost to the Falcons last week as well. I was on Washington last week, but it worked out. But they really could be 0-4. They could be. They have not been that impressive. Having said that, it's a bounce back spot for the Saints. It's twofold prediction real quick. Devin, we'll start with you. Number one, do the Saints win? Number two, well, let's start. Number one, do the Saints take the reins off of Jameis Winston a little bit? And number two, do they win this game?
Number one, they have to. I mean, you can't keep winning football games in NFL by handicapping your quarterback because you're worried about if he's going to make a mistake or not. So I think to answer that question, I think they take off some of the handcuffs they have on him. And then two, I think the Saints win the game. I mean, this is a game they have to have because you can't really afford to lose any more games against teams that probably won't be. I mean, sure, Washington can make a playoff push, but the Cowboys look like the driver's seat to win that division.
Jim, how about you? You kind of let your – and by the way, I'm on the Saints also here, which we all were last week, and we were all wrong. And I sort of – by Friday, I was like, I like the Giants plus 7.5. I'm on the Saints here. Jim, but do you think it's time to let Jameis go a little bit? Let's see what he can do. We know he can be mistake-prone, but is it that time?
I think they kind of have a little bit last week. You could see that they started to. And one of the things that Jeff Duncan talked about Monday on Datitude was it's sort of a feeling out process, but I think between Sean Payton, I'm not 100% sure he knows what he has. But I think that Jameis has improved. I think he's improved immensely, actually. And I think he's going to improve again. I think he's going to keep improving. So, yes, and answer to your question, I think they will let the reins go a little bit. I think they kind of have to, especially now that Tony Jones is out. You're not going to want Alvin Kamara to carry the ball 25 times again. You just can't. You can't afford to do that. So I think we'll see more swing passes out of the backfield, cut down on his carries. I'd like to see Taysom run the ball more and really out of kind of a almost try an H-back kind of role. That would be interesting. But to go to Devin's point, the Redskins, God, how many times will I do this?
We need to get you like one of those shock collars, man.
I'm glad we only play them once. The football team, they are tied fourth worst in the NFL with just 7 sacks going through 4 weeks of the season. So, of course, they'll have 6 this week because I'm bringing up the point. But our O-line is banged up. So I think they're going to have to count on Jameis a little bit more. He's going to have to flush himself out of the pocket because I do think the team's rush will be a little bit better this week. You can bet that Ron Rivera is talking about that all week long and showing him that statistic right there. And Chase Young will probably be on his A game. And with, again, a banged-up Saints offensive line, even though they have played fairly well without Armstead, without McCoy, they are going to have to figure out a way to throw the ball. And I'm going to make another bold prediction. If the Saints don't throw for at least 250 yards, they won't win the football game.
Yeah, listen, it is possible that after the bye week, which is next week for the Saints, they could get Michael Thomas back, Traquan Smith, Teron Armstead, and Eric McCoy, all of them, and Marcus Davenport. I think they get all of those guys back after the bye week for the Seattle game because they even get an extra day after that. That's a Monday night game. So this game sets up as such a pivot point for the season because if you're 3-2 and then all of a sudden you get healthier, a new team, you could go on a run. I don't care how tough the schedule is. This is when fully healthy, this is a top 10 team in the NFL. But if you lose this game, now all of a sudden you're chasing the rest of the year. You've got these losses to New York and to Washington, and it is just such a pivot point. And speaking of which,
real quick, Zachary, interesting stat for you. When I was doing my research yesterday for the trends column, the first 3 games of the season, the Saints threw for 151 yards or less in each of their first 3 games. And the last time they had done that was Bobby Scott at quarterback in 1976 to open the season. The last time they had done it in 3 consecutive games, not throw for more than 151 yards, was under Mike Ditka in his first season back in 1997. So it's not something that it's never happened under Sean Payton. And in fact, Sean Payton, it had never happened 3 times in a season, much less in consecutive weeks before this year under Sean Payton. So, and I know it was Drew Brees most of the time, but still, that's that was an amazing stat to me, and it's something that they've got to change in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, Taysom Hill started 4 straight games last year. I'm kind of surprised it didn't happen then. So that is not a stat for the new dads, by the way. That's a stat for the old dads. But anyway, I do want to pivot real quick before we get to our picks for the weekend and talk baseball playoffs real quick. I mentioned at the top, Chris Taylor, dramatic home run last night to lift the Dodgers into the National League Division Series, where they will play the Giants. And the Division Series has only been around since 1995. It was supposed to be 94. That was the strike year. So 1995. So it's been 25 years. This is by far the best Division Series matchup we've ever had. A 106-win Dodgers against 107-win Giants. Here are your Division Series prices for the first round of the Major League playoffs. And the first one starting actually right now, this afternoon, the Astros are hosting the White Sox in Game 1. Astros slight favorites. They're the smallest favorite of any of these series. The other ALDS begins tonight. The Red Sox, who survived the wild card game against the Yankees, they're pretty big underdogs against Tampa Bay, who's the class of the American League, or at least has been throughout the year. And then tomorrow afternoon, we have Brewers and Braves. The Brewers favorites there. They start with Corbin Burns. Shout out again to Bakersfield, just like James Carville did. He's starting Game 1 against Atlanta. And then the Giants and Dodgers. Interesting price there. The Dodgers were World Series favorites before they even had to play that elimination game. So they certainly are now that they're into this round. But guys, what do you make of this, Jim? Pick one of these prices out and tell me which one you like.
Oh, well, my favorite is clearly the Giants. I mean, you win the division, you beat the Dodgers, you went down the stretch and won something like 42 out of your last 60 or 62 games, and held off the Dodgers, who won their last 7 games in a row, and they still couldn't catch San Francisco, and made them play in that game last night. They expended a ton of energy in that game. The Giants just do everything right. They have been who would have thought Gabe Kapler would have done such a great job with San Francisco, but he really has after his stint in Philly when they couldn't wait to get him out of there. He has handled this pitching staff much better than he handled the pitching staff in Philadelphia. And I think San Francisco has an excellent chance to win the World Series, especially if they get past this series, because I don't think either one of the other 2 teams in the National League can beat the Giants.
I mean, I do like the Brewers. I've got to tell you that. I love their pitching staff. And if they could get Christian Yelich going, that lineup is scary too. So I do like them. I'm going to say my best pick on that board, though. Put that back up real quick, Devin. My best bet here, and this may surprise everybody, and it may make some people upset around here, it's the White Sox. I like the White Sox getting plus money. People don't realize, because they ran away with that AL Central, that is a talented team. And they were not healthy at the beginning of the year, but they're mostly healthy now. The lineup is scary. Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, Yohan Moncada. I'm forgetting somebody. But, I mean, that's a scary lineup. But even more than that, their pitching staff. Liam Hendricks was the best closer in the game this year. And their top 3 of Carlos Rodon, Lucas Giolito, and blanking on the name again. But they've got a terrific pitching staff. That I actually think people think of the Astros pitching staff as being unbeatable when they had Verlander and Greinke. Well, Verlander's hurt, and Greinke has not been all that effective. They're relying on younger guys. Lance McCullers has been Lance Lynn is the other Chicago starter.
Old dude.
But yeah, it's a battle of Lances this afternoon, actually. McCullers against Lynn. And McCullers has been pretty good. But outside of that, the Astros pitching staff starts to dwindle. I like the White Sox getting plus money there. Devin, you have a pick. I know you said baseball has not been your forte this year. I haven't been totally dialed into it. But when you look at that board, what do you like in this LDS round?
Yeah, I was actually going to say the Brewers. I think I like them. You know, I've been able to catch some of their games throughout the season. Like you mentioned, they have a really good pitching staff. And when you get to the playoffs, that's the most important thing. You got to have, not only good starting pitchers, but the bullpen has to be solid. And I think the Brewers, between them and the Braves, I think I trust the Brewers a little bit more to pull it out and be able to string together consistent games. So the American League Series starting this afternoon. The National League Series get going tomorrow, so that'll be going all weekend as well. Before we wrap it up, let's get to our best bets. We're a little bit behind schedule here, so we'll go pretty quickly, starting with Week 4 results.
And this is my favorite part because I actually won a week. Devin let up just a little bit, enough for me to get ahead of him. It was the Monday night loss that got you, Devin. But you're still plus 50. Your best pick was Michigan over Wisconsin. That thing was a lock. And worst pick, Ole Miss over Alabama. I think we all sort of were on the dog there in Alabama. Nick Saban reminded us why you don't bet against Nick Saban.
Not all of us.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
No, fair enough. I don't see that pick up there, Jim. What's going on?
Again, yet another week of taking the wrong big bucks picks because I did well for the third straight week. I had a winning week in my NFL picks column, but you wouldn't know it by big bucks because I am stinking up the joint.
I think Jim's in a spot where he's chasing his tail just a little bit, and he's trying to make these big
really
bets.
Not. I'm really not. I know you. It looks like that, and I can definitely see where one would interpret that. But I just thought the Saints were a lock to win last week. I really did. I
have them in my survivor pool, so I can't. I'm out of my survivor pool because of the Saints, so I can't fault you too much for that. Penn State for 40 over Indiana. They shut them out 24-0. And then I tried to go off the grid. I got a little desperate, and we won't talk about that last one. I still won $81 this week, guys. Best bets for week 5. Talking about the Nittany Lions, Devin Jackson's going with Penn State. And this is really the game of the week in college football. I know there's the Red River shootout rivalry, Oklahoma and Texas. There's also Auburn, Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas. There's some good college games this week. But Penn State is number 4 in the country. Iowa's number 3. Devin, you like the Nittany Lions going to Iowa City and getting it done?
Yeah, there's just something about Iowa that I just can't put my finger on it. I don't know if it's their just kind of lack of explosive offense. I know they're a really old school run the football, play defense type of team, but they've been getting like a crazy amount of turnovers. And I want to see them in a game where they don't create as many turnovers. I don't think Penn State will beat themselves and turn the ball over, 4 and 5 times like Maryland did last week on last Friday night. But I really think Penn State is going to be able to go in there and get a tough win. I know Iowa's been superb this year, but I just feel like Penn State's defense is just as good, if not better, than Iowa's defense. So I think they can hit a few explosive plays. And if you get up by a score or two on Iowa's offense, I mean, they're not effective coming from behind. That
is for sure. If either one of those teams gets up by 14 points, the game's probably over. I want to talk about that game just for a second before we move on to the other best bets because it is the game of the week. My take on this one, and I'm against you here, Devin, which makes me very nervous. But you say you want to see what happens when Iowa doesn't get turnovers. I don't think there's any such thing for that defense. They have 12 interceptions. They get great pressure on the quarterback. Their D-backs are all ball hawks. Sean Clifford, the Penn State quarterback, has thrown a pick each of the last 3 weeks. And that was Indiana. Okay, they're fine. That was Auburn, who's a good team, and it was Villanova. So he will throw picks. And I think he throws a couple here, and I think that's the difference. Meanwhile, Spencer Petras, the Iowa quarterback, nothing spectacular. He has gotten a little more efficient as the season's going on. Combine that with home field, I think Iowa can get it done by 3 to 4 points. Jim, your highest bet pick of the week is another teaser. Going back to that well, my friend.
I am, and I like this one. By the way, you typed it wrong. It's actually Titans plus 1.5, not minus 1.5.
Oh, no, my bad.
So again, I'm in a situation basically where both of these teams just need to win. I think the Titans bounce back this week against the Jags, who, for a lack of a better way to say it, are certainly having their issues internally, and I think it's going to affect them. They aren't good to begin with, and you got a really ticked off Titans team that is going to – they're either going to bounce back or they're going to fade into oblivion. So even more so than the Saints, this is an absolute must-win for Tennessee. Even considering how bad the AFC South is, I think they absolutely have to win this game, and I think they're going to. And then you go to the Chiefs. When you can give the Chiefs 3.5 points at home on the other end of the teaser, I was looking at what would be a good I'm not 100% sold that the Chiefs will win. I think they will, and I like their chances. In fact, I would venture to take them and give the 2.5 to Buffalo, even as well as Buffalo's been playing. They haven't hit anybody. and Kansas City is another team with their back against the wall. So I'm really taking two teams with their backs against the wall who I believe in, and I believe in Mahomes, and I believe in Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing about a teaser, everybody should know, if you don't like the bet straight up, if you're not at least already leaning that way, then you need to tease it the other way, or just stay away from it. So teasers work when they go past key numbers, which these do. The Titans go past the key number of even, and the Chiefs go past a +3. So it works. And if you like those bets anyway, and I'm with you. I actually thought about putting that on my best bets. Titans -4.5 against Jaguars. Like, do we really think the Jaguars are going to show up and compete for 4 quarters against a desperate team? I know the Titans haven't looked very good, but that seems funny to me. My best bet of the week is Wisconsin at Illinois. I know I've been on the Badgers a lot this year, and they've burned me, but their underlying analytics continue to show that this is a quality team. They've gotten in their own way with turnovers, but they are fixing to blow somebody out. And Illinois is a ripe suspect for that. Illinois played that game against Nebraska in week 0, and everybody was watching it because it was the only game on. And so I think they're a little overvalued. Wisconsin should win this game by double digits. I like the Badgers. Devin, $2,388, my friend. You're up almost 20% through just 4 weeks. That's pretty good. Jim's covering his eyes. Let's talk about your picks for this week. We'll get to Jim Derry in just a second. But Devin, you're at 2388. We talked about Penn State and Iowa. What else do you like here? Just pick out a couple for us.
Yeah, Coastal Carolina, Arkansas State. They play tonight, Thursday night football. Arkansas State doesn't play any defense, but they do score a lot of points offensively. So I feel like that taking the over on that game will be a good choice, because Arkansas State's been giving up a ton of points this year, and I expect Coastal Carolina out to a big lead. Arkansas State tries to come back later in the game, and he'll create at least over 73 points in that one. So I like that. I like Old Dominion at Marshall. I know it's only putting 22 down to get 20, but I think Marshall isn't as good as they have been in previous years. I think Old Dominion's offense, looks better than what they've shown. So I'm going to take Old Dominion there. And then one last one I'll point out from the NFL slate. I like the 49ers 5.5 at the Cardinals. Similar to, kind of my stance on some teams that have gotten big wins. The next week, they do tend to have a letdown. And the Cardinals are due for a game where they don't play as well. The 49ers defense is solid. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like top 3, top 5, but they're a solid defense. I don't know what the quarterback situation is per se, but I know they'll be able to run the football on the Cardinals. And I just have a feeling that this is going to be a tight game. It's going to come down to the wires, NFC West battle. Those games always tend to go that way, and it's kind of a must-win for the 49ers. They're kind of their backs are against the wall in this division. I mean, they have undefeated Cardinals. You got the Rams that are still looking to keep pace, and then of course the Seahawks, who they just lost to last week. So I think the 49ers find a way to keep it, within that 5.5 point range, and maybe even get the win against the Cardinals. So that was one I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, that's interesting, Devin, because we all three took the 49ers plus 5.5. Let's move on to Jim's picks, and that should probably make us a little bit nervous that we all like the Niners. And Jim, that's one of your bigger picks, and you're also going big on that teaser. We saw 120, so that number's either going to go bounce back up, or you're going to sink back down toward just half your total.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what my total was, and I was using an abacus, and I literally just finished counting it about 10 minutes ago. So that number is right on the mark there. So we're going to get some of that back this week. I mean, the 49ers is actually one of my best bets of the week in the NFL, and actually against the spread, maybe my best bet all week. It looks like Trey Lance is going to play. They're going to start, and usually when you get young quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks in there, after the season has started, you're talking about a Cardinals team that doesn't really know what to look for. So they're going to be a little bit confused as to what Trey Lance is going to do. There's really not a lot of film on him. So I expect him to have a pretty good game. And as Devin said, I mean, the Cardinals, to me, I think they're a really good team. I think they're potentially now with the 4-0 start, they're probably a playoff team, but I don't think there's any way to me that they're the NFC West champions, and they're due for a letdown. And the 49ers, to me, have their backs up against the wall. And at this time of year, these are the kind of weeks where I really like teams that I think are good teams with their backs against the wall. The 49ers certainly fall into that category. And you talk about the teaser. We talked about it already. I think, there's no such thing as a sure thing ever, but that's one of the ones I like. And then you talked about Penn State, Iowa. To me, this is as close to a toss-up game as you could get. I talked about how much I like Iowa, and I really do, but I like Penn State as well. I think the winner of this game has an excellent chance to go on and find their way into the playoffs. And I just think, like you talked about, Zach, with Iowa's defense, I think there's going to be turnovers on both sides of the ball, which leads me to the under. And I don't bet unders in college. The word is, if you bet an under in a college football game, you do so at your own peril. But this is one where I really like the under here, and I'm going to go out on a limb and take it.
You got to be careful, though, because those turnovers can turn into points sometimes, too.
That's true.
They can be the bane of the under, but that's an interesting call. I mean, it could easily be one of those games that finishes 13-9 if there aren't any turnovers, so just a ton of punts. You could also see that. So moving on to my big bucks picks, I'm pretty proud of my total here. I just can't compare it to Devin because then I don't feel as good about myself. One thing I'm doing is I'm taking the White Sox, I mentioned, to win the series over the Astros. I'm with you on Coastal Carolina tonight, Devin, except I'm taking the team total for Coastal Carolina over 46.5. That's a big number, but Arkansas State's defense is not good. And Coastal Carolina is one of those teams that's trying to get into the New Year's Six conversation. They're going to want to put up a big number. So I like that one. Talked about Wisconsin. Virginia Tech at home, night crowd, Lane Stadium, Notre Dame off an emotional loss. Virginia Tech coming off a bye week. I like the Hokies there. And then in the NFL, we talked about the Saints. I also like the overs in the London game, Falcons and Jets, because the Falcons can't stop anybody, and the Jets seem to have figured it out a little bit. And then Cowboys-Giants, I think, the more evidence we get, the more I see that Giants offense can score some points. And we know the Cowboys can score some points. So to me, for that to only be 51, which is the average total in the NFL, maybe 48, 49, for it to be only 51, I could see that thing being a shootout. And the Cowboys have also gotten into a position where they score a lot of points and then they let some teams back into it a little bit late. They've been in a lot of shootouts. I feel pretty good about that game going over. So those are our big bucks picks for week 5, and we'll see where we go with those. And we will be back with you Monday for odds and ends. And pretty soon, At the Book is actually going to be at the book. We announced that last week. We're still waiting on some logistics there, but Harrah's Casino in New Orleans will be the site, and we're excited to bring that to you. We'll have more details as soon as we can. And also want to let you know odds and ends Monday afternoon, as I said, and Jim Derry's Datitude podcast. Next episode hitting tomorrow, right, Jim?
That's correct. Mike Hoss on tomorrow, as well as Dave Choo DeCorbier coming on as we make our weekly NFL picks, and he tells me what uniform he likes the most.
And Devin, if you have another positive week, we're just going to let you talk the entire time next Thursday.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's starting to get in the middle of the season now, and things are probably going to change. So I'm just staying even keel. Don't want to get too high or too low because you never know what's going to happen. One bad week, and I could be in the cellar.
Spoken like a true ringer. I'm just glad we're not betting real money.
Exactly.
Hey, that's it for us. James Carville, we thank him for his time as always. You can play Cashin' In with Carville at NOLA.com/cashin'. That's Devin Jackson and Jim Derry. I'm Zach Ewing, and we'll see you next week on At the Book.